freedom, justice, and equality for black people doesn't mean diminishing freedom, justice, and equality for other people, as long as our freedom and our justice and our equality is not based on someone else's exploitation of our condition. If we are fighting to get our people up from the condition that we're in, and there are those who make merchandise of us in our condition, then naturally they would feel threatened by our people's rise.
Many times we have always highlighted some of the challenges that black people have gone through in the United States. And one of the major things is that there has been a systemic disenfranchisement among black people. But then there are certain leaders who have always come out to call out the government and the United States system against such kind of heinous activities. One of these leaders is Minister Farrakhan, the minister who is the leader of Nation of Islam. Many times he has gotten in trouble because of his hard stance and demand for justice for black people. And this is something that he is known for. Now, I came across a clip here that is quite interesting. He was engaging in a discussion with a media panel composed of reporters who seemed to be quite biased and prejudiced towards him. One thing that surprises me is the fantastic and calm way through which he handled the hard questions that was pushed to him. Watch this video and see how Minister Farrakhan dismantled the plan that was hatched for him by these white and black reporters. Let's watch this, then come back and share some thoughts together.
Our guest this morning is one of the more controversial figures in the news these days. He is Minister Farrakhan, Minister of the Nation of Islam, joining us on Florida Forum along with News Center 7's Mark Ludner and reporter Larry Bivens of the Miami Herald. Thank you for joining us, Minister Farrakhan. We appreciate it very much. I frankly must tell you, sir, that I'm not quite sure exactly how to begin this interview, because what I know about you from the news accounts that I've read and seen on television has left me with the following impression, that the Louis Farrakhan I know from the news media is one who seems to believe in and fight for racial equality, and yet in doing so seems to disparage and even insult the races of some others. Can you straighten me out on that?
Well, certainly we are fighters for freedom, justice, and equality for black people. But freedom, justice, and equality for black people doesn't mean diminishing freedom, justice, and equality for other people, as long as our freedom and our justice and our equality is not based on someone else's exploitation of our condition. If we are fighting to get our people up from the condition that we're in, and there are those who make merchandise of us in our condition, then naturally they would feel threatened by our people's rise.
All right, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I wonder who you're referring to.
Well, you know that there are those who have exploited the condition of black people. And there are some blacks that exploit our condition, but mainly white people have exploited the condition of black people. There are those who live from our poverty, from our ignorance, from our lack of ability to produce the things that we consume. So now when a voice stands up to get our people to begin to become productive, to begin to clean up our lives, those who sell drugs to our people are not happy about that. Those who pander filth and pornography and alcohol in our community are not happy about that. Those who generally suck the blood of our people are not happy about that.
Well, I don't think anybody, white, black, or any other color, is in favor of drug dealing and the litany of other terrible things that you just outlined. Let me not be coy. Let me not be vague. You are quoted as referring to Judaism as a gutter religion. You are quoted as having praise for Adolf Hitler. I have to confess, and I'm not shy about doing so, I'm offended.
Certainly you would be if that were true. And any Jewish person who read the papers saying that Farrakhan said that Judaism is a gutter religion ought to be offended. But that was not my intent. That was the intent of those who took my words out of their proper place.
What was it that you said, and what was it that you meant?
Exactly what I said and what I meant. You know, sir, that many people profess God, but their actions are totally different from what they profess. The scripture teaches that they draw nigh unto me with their lips, but their hearts are far removed from me. I was making a reference to the state of Israel. And I said that Israel, as a state, has not had any peace in nearly 40 years. And that Israel would not have any peace because there can be no peace structured on injustice, thievery, lying, and deceit, using God's name to shield your dirty religion under his holy and righteous name. Never once did I mention Judaism, nor was I referring to the revelation of God to Israel through Moses. I was referring to a wicked practice of thievery and lying and deceit and even murder to uphold a state that in my judgment is illegal or unlawful. That was my statement.
Well, I'm pleased to provide you with the opportunity to clarify the record, though I don't know how many people feel any better about what they've heard from you on the point. And on that note, let's move along to Mark Ludner.
I must confess that the record has not quite been clarified for me. Place it again into the context. Why is it that Judaism is, in your opinion, a gutter religion, and why should Jews not be offended by that? And put it in the context, in terms we can all understand.
Why must I continue, sir, to say Judaism? I never mentioned the word Judaism once. I am a Muslim, and I believe in all of the prophets. If Moses came to Jews and brought them a revelation called the Torah, I could not be considered a true Muslim unless I believed in Moses and believed in the Torah. Though the Torah does not mention Judaism as the name of the revealed religion, that is a name that came after that revelation. But if you're referring to what Moses revealed, that is a clean, holy, and pure doctrine to take a people who were unclean, unholy, and impure and improve their conduct. I have no quarrel with God's revelation to Moses from the Torah that you call Judaism. What I had reference to, sir, was the Zionist action of taking the state called Israel from the Palestinians in the name of God, in the name of the fulfillment of divine prophecy, which in my judgment, sir, does not refer to the people that are called Jews. We believe that that prophecy concerning that people that would go into bondage and be afflicted and suffer in a strange land for 400 years has nothing to do with the people today who call themselves Jews. For in the history of Egypt, there is no written record of Jewish people suffering in Egypt for 400 years under a wicked king named Pharaoh. But there is an historical record of black people in this country having been brought here in the year 1555 and are now in our 429th year of sojourn in this country. And we believe that the promised land is promised to us.
All right, what about the statement of Hitler being a great man? Now, what was the context in which that was
with due respect to the Jewish people who live in this area, my intention is not to offend you, because I, as a black person, am a member of a group that has been offended. And when you know the pain of being offended, you don't want to offend others. That was not my purpose. The whole context out of which the remarks came was the night of February the 25th when I was introducing Jesse Jackson to our convention. I was appealing to the Jews because at that time the Jaime remark had been made public, but Reverend Jackson had not admitted to the fact that he had actually used that terminology. The Jewish people, particularly the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith, had put out, I believe, a 24-page dossier on Reverend Jackson, which was in my possession. I knew the Jews were angry with Reverend Jackson because 5 years ago he visited Lebanon and embraced Yasser Arafat. I was appealing to Jews to sit down with Reverend Jackson and to understand that where we have converging self-interest, we can work together. But when black people come of age and have our own self-interest, we must follow our own self-interest. And then I warned the Jews that an atmosphere of hysteria was being created in which I believed what happened to Martin Luther King Jr. and John F. Kennedy could have happened to Jesse Jackson. So I said, sit down and reason. But I warn you, in the name of Allah, if anything happens to Reverend Jesse Jackson, this will be the last black person that you kill. Nobody asked me, Farrakhan, what do you mean? Are you threatening the Jewish community? I am warning America and warning Jews that we are tired of feeding our leaders to America like a piece of raw meat to a wild beast. I have not read in America where Jewish leaders have been shot down in cold blood, but every 20 years we read of a black leader cut down because his positions happen to be unpopular in America. And the next day, I was being labeled as a black Hitler. I took umbrage at those remarks, and I said, well, they're comparing me with Hitler. Well, that's all right, that's a good name. Hitler was a very great man. Not great for me, great for the Germans. Then I said, I am not proud of Hitler's evil to the Jewish people, but that's a matter of record. I said, but don't compare me with your wicked killers. Certainly Hitler was great. All of us as creatures of God have his greatness in us. But how do you use that greatness determines whether you're righteously great or wickedly great. Hitler was wickedly great.
Reporter Larry Bivens of the Miami Herald.
Minister Farrakhan, you have taken every opportunity to criticize the press, accusing it of misquoting you, quoting you out of context, and generating and perpetuating a fear of you in both the black and white communities. If I'm not mistaken, I even read somewhere where you have filed or said you were considering filing a libel suit against several of the major newspapers in this country. Yet you still meet with the press. You give interviews, you hold press conferences. My question is, aren't you actually enjoying all the attention you're getting that you deem so negative, and hasn't it been a resurrection of sorts for Louis Farrakhan in the black community and given you a platform that perhaps you would not have?
You know, it's interesting to me, the press didn't bring me into national public attention because they wanted to do good for Louis Farrakhan. Quite the contrary. There were many that were fearing Jesse Jackson's bid for power, which would mean that because of Jesse Jackson, black people might get some form of political power to change the realities under which we live. They decided to use Louis Farrakhan to embarrass Jesse Jackson to stop Jesse Jackson's march toward power. I came out of a self-imposed silence with the press in February of this year. Now Farrakhan is a national figure, and quite to the contrary, black people, instead of going away from Louis Farrakhan, are coming to Louis Farrakhan. I don't seek the press seeks me, and I decide whether I care to speak to them or not to speak to them. And I have decided to come to this forum and other forums that perhaps someone out there might understand me better.
Okay, your answer leads into my next question. If you feel so strongly that you were being used to discredit the Reverend Jackson's campaign, don't you think that you could have helped his campaign perhaps by sort of fading into the background at the first drop of a bit of controversy generated by you?
It depends, brother, on the purpose. My purpose for joining Reverend Jackson's campaign, number one, was to help him in his desire to become the nominee of his party. But more than that, I recognize that what Reverend Jackson was doing was revolutionary and could lead to the loss of his life. My aim was to put the common black people whose hearts and minds I have touched in my last 30 years of service around Jesse Jackson. And God blessed me to do that, and so Jesse Jackson is alive today by the grace of God. When in April, I think it was the 4th of April, after this thing with Milton Coleman hit the news, I wasn't so worried about that because I never really threatened Milton Coleman's life. But when the press said that I would march to Washington, which I did say, and take an army if they locked Jesse Jackson out, and I would ask for separation, when I saw the way the press used that, I decided to back away from Jesse because I did not want to hurt him. And at that point, Jesse's people said no, they didn't want me to back away from his campaign.
Well, that's not the way the story reached me. You know, the way I heard it was that the Reverend Jackson disavowed your support because it became politically untenable for him to possibly take any other course.
When was that?
Well, I can't tell you the exact date, but it was during the Democratic campaign for the presidential nomination.
Yeah, but Jesse never said to me personally that my being an aide to him in this campaign was hurting him and I should back off.
Well, I don't know. I can't roll the videotape for
But
you.
I remember,
my recollection is that the Reverend Jackson publicly in front of the news media and everyone else within earshot disavowed the statements that Minister Farrakhan was making, that you were making, simply because he had to separate himself from the philosophies that you were espousing that were so foreign to his own belief and the belief of the party whose nomination he sought.
That was the end of June. And I think if you recall, Jesse had just come back from Cuba and Nicaragua. And he had no time to really hear the statement, the text of the statement that I had made. And if you recall, he was given 48 hours, his people, to denounce and repudiate Louis Farrakhan, or they would not allow Reverend Jackson to come to the convention to make a speech. At that time, there was a vote being taken or contemplated being taken in the Senate to repudiate and censure Louis Farrakhan, and if Jesse Jackson did not repudiate me, he would be a part of that censure.
Do you have any relationship with either the Palestinian Liberation Organization or its agents, any relationship with the country of Libya or its agents, any relationship with the country of Cuba or its agents?
Now, by that question, do you mean, do I have friendship with them? Am I an agent of theirs?
Well, let's take it one at a time. Do you have friendship with them?
I have friendship with the Libyan people, yes. I have friendship with Palestinians, yes. But my friendship with the Muslim world came as a result of my stand for Palestinians, not before.
Do you receive money from them?
I have not received as much as a dime or as little as a penny from anyone. All the funds that we get are totally from black people.
Well, they have black people in Cuba, and they have black people
black
in
Americans, my own constituency.
Black Americans.
Yes.
You know, every cent you receive comes from black Americans.
That is correct.
Okay.
And I'm sure if it were otherwise, they would know it.
Which
government would know?
Who does fund you, though? Where do you get your money?
I'm very proud to say to you, sir, that most black organizations right now are being funded by white philanthropy and by Jews who feel some kinship to black causes. This is good in one sense, and it is very bad in another, because once those leaders want to speak to issues that may inflame those who feed them financially, they're threatened that their money will be taken away.
Where do you get your money?
Nobody can threaten Louis Farrakhan to take my money away, because the money that comes to me to help me in this work comes from those few thousand that you all claim that I have, those 5,000 or those 10,000.
I don't know anything about it. I'm just asking a question. Where you get your money?
It comes from the people that believe in the work that I'm doing. And they're here in the United States, not in Libya and not the Palestinians.
The people you allude to, the three, they also have people here, I must point out to you.
And not the Cubans. Whether they're here or elsewhere, they are not financing Louis Farrakhan.
Okay, I'm just asking a question. Mark Lund.
What is the Nation of Islam?
The Nation of Islam is a group of black men and women committed to the philosophy and teachings of Islam as taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, a man whom we believe Almighty God Allah raised up in America to civilize and reform the conduct and behavior of black people and to make us into a nation for the glory of God.
How many followers do you have?
In honesty and truth, I could not tell you how many followers I have. You all seem to know more about my followers than I do. But I certainly have many more than 5,000 or 10,000, but I couldn't give you an exact number.
Mm-hmm. Why are you convinced that, that Islam is the proper course for American blacks, who, many of whom think they've been served quite well for Christianity for many years? Why is Islam more beneficial than Christianity or Buddhism or even Judaism for blacks?
I don't want to get into an ideological or theological argument on that score. I don't feel that God revealed three different religions. Mm-hmm. God is not the author of confusion according to the scripture. He's the author of peace. And if I look at the teachings of Abraham, the teachings of Moses, the teachings of Jesus, the teachings of Muhammad, I see a common thread running through all of those teachings. I see that the prophets taught the same basic principles, eternal principles, and superimposed on those eternal principles were contemporary teachings to solve the problems of a people at that particular time. The message of Jesus is a good message. The message of Moses is a good message. The message of Muhammad is a good message. That message we call Islam. Islam only means submission to the will of God. The Christians may call it Christianity, and the Jews may call it Judaism. But you will not find the name Judaism mentioned in the Torah, nor will you find the term Christianity mentioned in the Gospel. But the term Islam is mentioned in the Quran.
Larry?
During your visit here in Miami, you have maintained your position against Black Washington Post reporter Milton Coleman for reporting Reverend Jackson's Jaime and Jaimetown remarks. You have urged the black community to ostracize him as a form of punishment. The scripture teaches us that the ability to forgive is also a virtue. And being such a religious man yourself, do you see at some point you opening your arms to embrace Coleman and urging those you have urged to denounce him to do the same, to embrace him?
I'm very glad you raised that question, brother, because Milton Coleman did not just report on Reverend Jackson. If Reverend Jackson was talking to him on the record, Milton Coleman should have reported what he said. Milton Coleman was talking to Reverend Jackson off the record, and Milton Coleman broke the canon and ethics of his profession by revealing what Jesse Jackson had talked to him of off the record. Now, it is your job as a reporter to look not only at us, but to look around us. You are not a protector of a black leader or a white leader. You are a protector of the public. And as such, we should be watched and looked at by you in that manner. I believe, of course, that Milton Coleman erred morally and ethically. Now, of course, we can embrace Milton Coleman. We can forgive Milton Coleman, but forgiveness does not come first. Repentance comes first. And once Milton Coleman acknowledges that he made a mistake, then we can forgive Milton Coleman and embrace him again. I want to make one more point on that. I talked with Milton Coleman on at least 3 occasions by telephone. And I said to Milton Coleman that I had told blacks that he was, in fact, a Judas. And I said, Milton, if I have erred, you owe it to me to tell me your reasoning for what you did, that I might tell others and remove what I have said. Milton Coleman only wanted to talk to me in a reportorial stance and not as a man to man or brother to brother. So it remains exactly as it was.
You were born in New York.
Yes, sir.
And you are presently based in Chicago. and you speak this morning in Miami, Florida. Now, I got to tell you, we got our problems, and they are serious. But you speak in a community that has probably experienced as much, if not more, racial turmoil in the past few years as almost any other big American city. And there are a lot of people out there, white and black, who are trying to do everything they can to help bring about the social change and make improvements in the community to avoid the sort of terrible things that have happened here in the past and that everybody loathed. To a critic or an observer who sees you fly in and espouse your line of philosophy and who wonders skeptically whether Minister Louis Farrakhan might want to fuel the fires of unrest and possibly trigger or in some way prod on the sort of disturbances that we're struggling to overcome, the entire community. What would you say to such a critic or such an observer?
First of all, I would be a very foolish man who did not love my own people if I did such a thing. For me to come to Florida and try to urge black people to take on a foolish action which would lead to the wholesale slaughter of young men and women would be far, far away from my own thinking. But if the city of Miami is so interested in solving the problems between black and white, which, according to your words, they loathe, then the city administration should give justice to the poor oppressed. That young man that was shot to death by Mr. Alvarez, if the city really wants peace, give his family justice by at least admitting that that policeman was incorrect, jail a murderer, and take him off the street. But when you give him a clean bill of health, and allow him to continue on the police force, you are not helping to solve the racial tensions. You as a common citizen, he is a common citizen, this gentleman is a common citizen. You may want to heal the rift, but those in positions of power have the ability to heal the rift if
Minister
they would
Farrakhan,
do justice.
you raise your voice with passionate rhetoric, citing an incident that resulted in the sort of civil disturbance that I wondered about whether you somehow wanted to maybe trigger off again. To a critic who wonders whether Louis Farrakhan is a demagogue, you would answer by saying
Did you
what?
read what I said to black people last night? I said, Mr.
Are you a demagogue? We've got 30 seconds.
No, I'm not a demagogue. If Mr. Alvarez killed a black man, on Friday and Saturday night, black people kill each other more than any Hispanic policeman could do. We must stop killing ourselves, then Mr. Alvarez will not exist.
How much longer are you going to be in town?
Just a few more hours.
Wow, what a heated exchange. I think that is Louis Farrakhan for you. You know, Minister Louis Farrakhan never minces his words. He has a conviction, and once he believes in something, he will always pursue it to the long end. And I think being just one person facing those three journalists, it was a walkover for him. This tells you that when someone is equipped with knowledge, you cannot defeat them. You see, these guys have brought up issues and the hearsays that they have about Louis Farrakhan and the things that they think Louis Farrakhan has done. But then if you look at the kind of responses that Minister Louis Farrakhan has given, you'd be happy if you are a black person or if you are a supporter of him, to know that he was well equipped and ready to handle them regardless of the kind of thoughts and the kind of slurs that they threw at him. Now, I asked myself, why is it that most black leaders sometimes face backlash as Louis Farrakhan has faced? You know, sometimes these black leaders are just reaching out and speaking up for their people who cannot speak for themselves. And then you find that the government is coming out with kind of falsified issues and planting them on people like Louis Farrakhan. Why is he so hated? Why is it that black leaders who are able to speak their minds freely are always executed, are always faced with a lot of threats, are always hunted down? Why is this the case? This is a question that everybody must ask, because as black people, Certainly, we are the majority in the world, but then we are looked at in a different way. In the United States, they form a part of minority groups. Look at the inventions that have happened. Black invention rule the world. Blacks are the people who control this world. But then if you look at how the society has been wired, they have been looked at as people who do not own anything or people who do not deserve to be respected. So here is my little research on why these black leaders are always targeted. Black American leaders frequently challenge systemic issues such as racial injustices, economic inequality, and historical discrimination that has existed in the United States. Their advocacy can disrupt the status quo, raising uncomfortable questions for established power structures and media institutions. For example, leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and many more have drawn a significant media attention by confronting deeply ingrained social issues. This confrontation can provoke defensive reaction and result in polarized media coverage. So this is the same thing that is facing Minister Louis Farrakhan. He has always talked about the racial injustice and discrimination that happens to black people. And he has desired that it is not right for people who have been privileged to take advantage of black people where they feel weak. And that is the kind of message that he has even continued to push in the clip that I've just played for you. Secondly, the media often struggles with balancing the portrayal of black leaders within a framework that avoids reinforcing negative stereotypes while addressing the complexities of their messages. Leaders who speak critically about systemic racism or institutional powers can be misrepresented or labeled as radical, which complicates nuanced reporting and may lead to sensationalism or bias in coverage. This is the case. Anybody who stands up for truth is always painted negatively. Why is it that people like this are always targeted? It means there is a system that is afraid of being exposed. And that is why when truth speakers come out, they are targeted and they are people whose lives are always in danger. Additionally, the historical context of media portrayal of black leaders includes a legacy of marginalization and misrepresentation. Historically, media outlets have often depicted black leaders in a negative or threatening light, influencing public perception. This historical bias can contribute to contemporary fears about covering these figures, as media outlets grapple with repercussions of potentially perpetuating these harmful narratives. Moreover, black leaders who mobilize significant grassroots support or advocate for substantial societal changes can challenge the interests of power stakeholders. This dynamic creates tension as media coverage must navigate the potential backlash from influential groups or public opinion shifts. In summary, media apprehension towards black American leaders is rooted in their challenging of systemic issues, the complexity of accurate portrayal, historical biases, and the potential consequences of disrupting established power dynamics. So this is the case. So when you saw Minister Louis Farrakhan facing those three journalists, in fact, including a black journalist who should know better, so you can make up your mind, but I think this is a critical point that we must talk about. Tell me down in the comment section what you think about this, and if you're watching us for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and also share. Thank you, and may the good Lord bless you. Goodbye.